Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story was called Abusive Boss Accidentally Picks on His Own Boss and Pays the Ultimate Price. As I sit in a bar, enjoying my coffee, a story pops into my mind from 10 years ago of how I put a jerk down to the ground for venting his frustrations over to his subordinates. Let us begin with the backstory, which is quite long, but necessary for you to get a feeling of what was going on at the time. It was just months before the financial crisis, and I was working for the tech department in a very large company. It was quite a large department in which we handled electronics. The department stood out from most of the company, as it was receiving a bit of a different treatment. The company thought if they create an extremely pleasant working environment there, they could get away with paying those stationed there with considerably less wages than they could be eligible for. And it was also a meritocracy. Your rank and station was based on what you were capable of, not how long you were in the company. I say that because just after 2 years, I was running the whole department. The reason for that was because aside from being a computer technician, I also had skills in electrotechnics, electronics, programming, and online advertising, which the company realized and put me in charge of the whole bunch. However, before you question the validity of this story, you should know that while I had the rank, I made only marginally more money than the rest of the department. The only plus was the rank, and that I had half the working hours of the rest of the department. My only job was to make sure that everybody was at their best while doing their job and paperwork, along with comms and coordinating with the rest of the company. I felt it was important that you knew the entire story, because now I want to introduce you to Richard. Richard was a hard worker, but a sick, evil, miserable, illegitimate child who was at the company for over 6 years, but couldn't get any higher up the ladder other than shift supervisor for the machinery boys, because that's all he knew how to do. He was 2 ranks below me. Richard was an utter Richard. He constantly picked on his subordinates, berating them, yelling at them, picking on the coffee boy. The coffee boy was the rookie. Bringing coffee was an initiation ritual. Essentially, Richard being in charge of you was a very unpleasant experience. At the time, I didn't know this was going on. Richard was not in the group I ascended over, and I dealt with that group over his superior. I didn't know it was going on because I had my hands full with running the whole thing from an office halfway across the company building. It's a big building. Before we continue, you should know that my country has a law against workplace abuse called bossing, in which, if there has been emotional harm inflicted, the person who performed bossing could even face jail time, and the company in question could pay massive fines. To continue, suddenly I received an email from my superior, telling me there was an incident regarding Richard and that I had been scheduled for disciplinary action. Apparently, there was a coffee girl in his group which he utterly destroyed to the point where she had a nervous breakdown. And as a department administrator, I received huge flack for not sustaining a pleasant working environment, which was department policy so that people wouldn't complain so much about the subpar pay they were getting. Richard got me in so much trouble that I had to spend a week of constant damage control with my own superior. In the end, I was ordered to take appropriate action against Richard to prove that I was still the man for the job. Richard got me in a lot of trouble. Richard was going to pay. There was just one problem. There was no evidence against Richard, so I was going to have to be sneaky. I sent a message to Richard's superior, notifying him that they will be getting a replacement coffee boy from another group tomorrow. Me! I was going undercover to stick it to Richard. There is a saying, you see a guy in a suit and a tie and you think he's successful, until you realize he's working for a man in jeans and a polo shirt. This holds true as Richard is a suit and tie guy while I wear jeans and a polo shirt to work. It's the day of revenge. I take no special preparations other than a hidden recording device, and I even wear the aforementioned outfit. I arrive at work and ask 2 security guards to go with me to wait just outside Richard's work area. I purposely wait until I'm 5 minutes late, then enter the work area with Richard's people. I greet everyone and go straight for the coffee pot. Richard notices my tardiness and starts ranting.
Coffee boy, what the heck do you think you're doing? Come late on your first day? Get your butt moving and serve everybody.
Yes, sir. I serve coffee to everybody, but one of the techs recognizes me. I pour some coffee in his pot and tell him to say nothing because I am recording Richard. At that time, Richard was across the room insulting another employee for misplacing his tools. After I finish serving coffee, I go to my workplace and start working. I intentionally fumble at my work, as a rookie would, in order to get Richard's attention. It works, and Richard notices me and races right towards me.
What the heck do you think you're doing, boy? What is the mess you made? You are completely useless. I cannot use you for anything. I should send you to mop the floors and you'll even screw that up.
I turned towards Richard. I put my hands at my hips and leaned forward, going in Richard's face. Richard presses his second and third finger against his thumb and starts to wave it at my face.
Don't you get uppity on me, boy. I am your boss. I know the administrator. I can get your butt on the street in 5 minutes. Do you want to go home? Answer me.
I am the administrator.
Security!
Both guards arrive, going into full BA mode, grabbing hold of their mace pockets in one hand and fists clenched in the other. I swear, Richard immediately dropped a couple of spoonfuls into his pants. The guard says,
Yes, Mr. OP?
Escort Mr. Richard to my office immediately for, I lean right into his face, severe disciplinary action.
Mr. Richard, come with us.
Later in my office, Richard was sat down and he listened to the audio recording of the incident. I also made him read out loud an extract of the labor law concerning bossing. Then I go full cold turkey on his butt. Mr. Richard, you have been caught severely abusing your employees, which is not only against department policy, but it is also a criminal offense, punishable by jail time in certain circumstances. Do you have anything to say in your defense? He begins shaking, stuttering, and sweating.
I would, but I am...
It's what I thought. Let me tell you what's going to happen. I have enough evidence to pin the breakdown of a coffee girl on you, which means that I have the power to send you to jail. Not sure if it was true, I was just bluffing. So, your disciplinary action is going to be as follows. First, you are going to be demoted for at least a period of 2 months. Your previous group was lacking a coffee boy. I think you would be perfect for the job. Secondly, you are going to love it. Thirdly, you are going to send flowers and a letter of apology to the girl you broke down. But if you, 1, try to quit within the time allotted for your punishment, and 2, so much as look at your former subordinates in a way they wouldn't like it, and 3, not do your work with utmost distinction, I will send this evidence to the authorities and use every scrap of power I have in this company to send you to a jail so bad that when you come out of it, you'll be wearing diapers for the rest of your life.
Have I made myself clear?
Utterly pale and defeated, Richard says,
Yes, Mr. OP.
To add insult to injury, I inform his group of Richard's demotion. I told them that he has absolutely no authority over them anymore, and he is going to serve them coffee until a time I see fit to rejoin them, but only as a serviceman equal in rank to the group. Richard was also forced to clean out his office in front of the group, as the coffee boy wasn't even entitled to his own cubicle, let alone a desk. Is this nuclear revenge? I disagree. I feel that he got exactly what he deserved. He is now going to have to lick the boots of those he treated so badly before. I am by no means an angel. After all, I did fail to notice the abuse that was going on underneath me. But, to be fair, nobody was brave enough to stand up to Richard in fear of losing their jobs due to the crisis looming overhead. This was a satisfying revenge story. Possibly on par with The Lion King, but I feel like that's up for debate. This story was called Saved by Utter Incompetence. I'm not certain that this story belongs in r/ProRevenge, although I did get the satisfaction of seeing the perpetrator getting the absolute bollocking of a lifetime from his boss. That particular aspect is really only tangential to the story. Suffice it to say that he got his just desserts and faded into obscurity shortly afterwards. So, one could argue this really is pro-revenge by proxy. Be that as it may, I hope you enjoy one of the most bizarre tales from my career. So, without further ado, and for your philosophical and intellectual pleasure, the story. The timeline for this tale is Christmas 1988. I used to have a music production studio based out of a big studio rehearsal complex in South London, and I had been working for 3 days on recording and producing some backing tapes for a client, who also happened to be an old friend. The last day we spent working on the mixdowns, and at about 9:30 p.m., we decided to take a time out and go to the local pub for some refreshment, rest our ears, and generally chew over what we've done. While we were blowing the froth off a couple, my old friend Alex and his girlfriend turned up. We all knew each other, so decided to carry on until closing time. Since it was getting late, I suggested we all go back to the studio, listen to the mixes we'd done, and call it a day. As we were walking down the corridor, we came across the rehearsal studio's manager, a person of staggering arrogance and ineptitude, and a frequent thorn in my side, who was restocking the beer machine in the green room. I told him that we were just going downstairs to my studio to listen to what we'd been doing and to wrap things up. I also told him not to lock up before checking in with me first. So we all settled down and listened to the first track. At the end, Alex had to go to the bathroom, so he went off in search of relief while we carried on. The second track had barely started playing when he came back in and said that all the lights were off upstairs, and furthermore, the security doors in the upper corridor were all locked.
What, the front door?
Thinking he was just winding me up, I went up to investigate. And sure enough, all the lights were off, and the security doors closed up tighter than an ancient sphincter attempting to rein in the purgative effects of a thermonuclear-grade vindaloo. Going back to the studio, I tried to call the studio owner, but got no joy. So we sat there for a while trying to work out what on earth to do. Alex in particular was rather concerned as he was due to fly off to the Middle East the first thing in the morning to shoot a commercial. Eventually, I decided the only hope was to call the fire brigade and get them to come and rescue us. 20 minutes went by, no fire brigade. 30 minutes, still no joy. By this time, I had lost my patience. So, grabbing my toolbox, I went upstairs to the fire exit, which had been chained up, and proceeded to dismantle the entire emergency panic bar exit mechanism from the inside. I managed to get it open, only to be confronted by a big, burly fireman about to lay into the door with a large fire axe. Fortunately, I managed to avoid being sliced in two by the simple expedient of stepping rapidly to one side. The rest of the firemen entered and checked out the rest of the building while I regaled the lead officer with our tale of woe, much to his evident amusement. Despite his amusement, he was absolutely furious with the clear violation of basic fire safety principles, and he told me he'd be back the first thing in the morning to give the owners a rightful ear because there was a strong case for prosecution over the incident. As you might imagine, I was not best pleased with the entire farrago, so the next day around noon, I stormed into the main studio's office, thundercloud in tow and breathing fire. Ironic, really. And in front of the studio owner and his wife, proceeded to lay down some serious invective upon the head of the hapless studio manager, calling into question his dubious parentage, and threatening to attach his gonads to the output terminals of the largest Class A amplifier I could find if there was ever a repeat of the entire sorry debacle. The studio owner was none too pleased either, a massive understatement by the way, having been read the riot act by the fire brigade. He was also furious that, in order to deal with the huge legal fallout from the incident, he'd had to cancel the flight he'd booked to the States, which meant that he and his wife weren't going to be able to visit their family until the new year. The flight the studio owner and his wife were booked on, but had to cancel, was Pan Am 103. Alright guys, that was a pretty fun story. However, in case you weren't wondering how crazy that last bit is, Pan Am 103 is a flight that got blown out of the sky in 1988. Alright, a lot of people died. Pretty crazy stuff. Guys, this last story was called Make My Life Heck at Multiple Jobs, I'll Get You Fired. Backstory. In the early 2000s, I worked for an overpriced CD store. I really liked my job aside from one coworker, Karen. We just didn't get along. I made the best of it, but she was a borderline bully. Of course, she gets promoted to key holder and proceeds to turn into a full-blown power trip bully. She made my life horrible, and a job that I had previously loved, I couldn't stand anymore. I made a formal complaint that made its way to HR, but I was done working there, which was her goal. Of course, when HR investigated my claims, they found she and the assistant manager were dating. Oops. And she was moved to another store since fraternizing was against policy. Apparently, she didn't like that store and quit. A few months later, I was happily working at Defunct Bookstore, and who gets a job at the Defunct Bookstore at another mall? Karen! Over the next few months, she proceeds to do little things that annoy me, like hanging up when I would call their store for a customer or leave me on hold forever. Of course, I would get in trouble for not effectively handling the customer with their needs. The revenge? About 6 months into the job, I heard through the grapevine of store gossip that Karen had been injured in a car accident. Apparently, she had hurt her back and went on medical leave. She couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes at a time without excruciating pain. This is important. She was on indefinite leave, and her store could not hire anyone to replace her while on medical leave, leaving them short-handed. And I knew her manager was really annoyed after a few months. 2 months later, a few friends of mine and I decided to go play pool. A former coworker, Rick, from the overpriced CD store, was there.
Man, too bad you weren't there last night. It would have been a reunion. Karen and the assistant manager here playing pool.
Karen was playing pool?
Oh yeah, they come in every Wednesday night.
Really? That's interesting. Every Wednesday, huh? How long has this been going on?
A few months now.
Yes. For the entire time she was on medical leave, Karen was out playing pool once a week, not at home in debilitating pain like she claimed. The next day, I went to her defunct bookstore and asked to speak to the manager. I told him all about her weekly pool sessions and encouraged him to be at the pool hall next Wednesday night to catch her in action. That Thursday, she was fired. The next time I saw her, she and her friend were attempting to follow me home from work. I called the police and led them into the police station where they told her to leave me alone or be arrested. She stayed away from me after that. Oh boy, you better be careful when lying about being injured, alright? People will get on you for that. Tell me some stories in the comments below where someone faked being injured. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.